Has the news been getting you down? I'm Megan McArdle, and I'm here to help. I'm the host of a news show from Washington Post Opinion called Reasonably Optimistic, and it's an antidote to the pessimism that's riddling America right now. Every Wednesday, I'm going to talk to people who see a path forward.
It does seem to me that there is some awakening of a desire to act together, to solve problems where they are.
You know, I am a believer in America, and it's worth fighting for.
Join me Wednesdays on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.
I'm here on a job site with Tim, who owns his own electrical contracting business.
3 employees and 2 work trucks.
Tim traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance. We're positively here where he needs us most.
They sure are.
With step-by-step help on all his insurance needs, all for shockingly low rates.
Shockingly low, huh?
Just a little bit of electrician humour. Do you get it?
I got it.
You know, it feels like we have a real connection. All right, I'll stop.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
Today, I have a major breakthrough in the disappearance of MH370, a revelation that undermines the theory that motivated the decade-long unsuccessful seabed search for the missing Malaysian airliner. I'm going to show how a crucial vulnerability that search officials had believed to be impossible is in fact quite readily exploitable. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking with 777 pilot and YouTuber John Waters to show you in detail exactly how it works in a real 777 aircraft. That's all coming up right now. Hi, everybody. Jeff Wise back with you for another episode of Finding MH370, the only podcast where we dive deep into every aspect of the technical evidence with the help of leading subject matter experts in order to solve aviation's greatest mystery. And this episode really demonstrates why that approach can be so powerful. Regular viewers will recall that in the previous 2 episodes, I talked about how search officials became convinced that the plane had to have gone into the southern Indian Ocean because they didn't think that debris could be planted and they didn't think that Inmarsat data could be tampered with. Today, I'm going to talk about a third belief, namely that the plane had to have been hijacked by the captain because that's who is in the cockpit and the plane can only be flown from there. It turns out that this is not true. It turns out that there's a relatively simple way to fly the plane from the electronics bay, and I was able to figure it out in detail by looking at publicly available documents and talking to professors at aeronautical universities and to retired control systems engineers. To help me explain it all, I'm honored to be joined today by John Waters, a former U.S. Air Force F-16 fighter pilot who now flies 777s for a living and is also the host of the excellent Afterburn Podcast. You can check that out through this link here. I'll also put a link in the show notes. John and I did a joint episode a couple of months ago, and it was really fun and informative. So I jumped at the opportunity when he offered to film a tour of the 777 electronics bay and talk with me about how an attacker could take advantage of how easily accessible it is.
Jeff, good to see you.
John, great to see you again. Always love doing episodes with you. And this was, I think, a really particularly exciting one because this is a topic that really gets to the core of the MH370 mystery. I've been making a bunch of podcasts lately that kind of focus on the idea of like, what could we have gotten wrong? What could the authorities have assumed that they shouldn't have assumed. And in this particular one is when I've really sort of poured my heart and soul into, as you'll see. And this is the question of, can you control a 777 from anywhere other than the cockpit? And for most airplanes, the answer is no, of course not. The only, like I fly little Piper Cubs, the only way you can fly Piper Cub is by holding the stick in your hand and manipulating it from the pilot seat. Well, that's true of most airplanes. It turns out it might not be true of the 777. The 777 is a very unusual plane technology-wise. It's sort of transitional between the mechanically actuated flight surfaces of the Wright brothers planes onward, up until this plane was designed in like the 90s, and it was the first fly-by-wire airplane that Boeing made. And so you have a plane where you, as the pilot, don't tell the flight surfaces directly what to do. You basically move the controls. The controls generate an electrical current, basically, which is detected by a piece of equipment called the actuator control electronics. It's a box that lives in the electronics bay. And then that box talks to the primary flight computers, which do all of their amazing calculations, and they get input from like what the airspeed is and what the attitude is and what the limitations on the flight envelope is and everything. And then it sends its final calculation back to the what's called the ACE, the actuator control electronics. That box takes that digital signal, translates it back into analog signals, and sends it to the flight control surfaces, which are basically hydraulically powered movers that move the flaps and the ailerons and the rudder and all those things that make the plane move in the sky. And so the question is, so as we're going to see, so I'd reached out to you, John. I said, you fly these planes for a living. I have heard, you can find footage of it on the internet, but it's out there that all of these electronics that control the flight surfaces are in this compartment that in a passenger configured 777 is at the front of the passenger. Usually configured as the first class. In the case of MH370, it was the business class. It's up there at the front. It's an unlocked hatch. And if you get down in there, all of those things are down there. And there is no security layer. Like modern electronics, like your phone, if someone steals your phone, they can't really do anything with it, right? Because there's a security layer. You have to put in your password, have to scan your face. There's none of that in the electronics bay of a 777. Because again, this was a transitional technology. It was to the very dawn of the age of fly-by-wire. And so a lot of these considerations hadn't really entered into the calculations of the engineers. So I had said to you, let's show people how you can get down into electronics bay so that people can really get a sense of how accessible these boxes are. And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is how you would take advantage of this vulnerability if you were a person who wanted to take control of the flight deck, of the flight controls from the flight deck. Now, that seems like a bad thing to do. In the case of MH370, it would be a bad thing to do. I think if you were on a plane with a flight, one of these flight marshals, and you were like, I'm going to go take over control of the plane, I don't think they'd want you to do that. But the question is, like when I first started talking about the possibility that MH370 could have been a third-party hijack because of this vulnerability in electronics bay, a number of people stepped forward and said, that is impossible. You can't do it. And I actually one of them was in the Netflix documentary that I was in. He's very prominently kind of shoots down my theory by saying that's impossible, can't be done.
Anyone who gets into the hatch can disable the transponder and disable the communication systems. But it is impossible to fly the aircraft from the avionics compartment. It is impossible.
I reached out to him and I said, can you explain to me just exactly why it's impossible? And what I got was a lot of hand waving and a lot of, well, it's very complicated. So what I wound up doing was reaching out to people who teach flight control systems. I talked to some people who had worked on companies that make flight control systems, and sort of piece by piece, I got them to help me and I was able to understand how this vulnerability could work. And I wound up writing a description of how you would do it. And then I applied for a patent in Germany. Why Germany? Because one of the viewers of my podcast had reached out to me and said, I work for the German patent office. This is what I think, da, 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 da. And I said, can you help me get a patent? And he said, no, I can't because I work in the patent office, but I can give you the name and contact information for a patent attorney in Germany. So that's why I did it. And I also think that Germany is like a pretty reputable country technology wise. So I feel like if the German patent office says, yes, this idea actually works, then that's a kind of endorsement of the idea. But I wanted, with your help today, to sort of explain to viewers the rough gist of like how, if you and I, John, were going to take over 777, how we would do it and take it over from outside the cockpit. So I had reached out to you. You're actually traveling right now. You're in Korea.
Yeah, a couple miles away.
And it's the middle of the night, but you seem very, very chipper.
Yeah, just happy to be here. I'm on an East Coast body clock. That's the beauty of this, despite the fact that it's 3 a.m.
Right. Great. So I had asked you if you could, ideally, we'd even talked about me like visiting you on the plane, which would have been cool, but I think logistically it proved pretty daunting. So basically I asked you to just take footage with your iPhone. Is that how it worked?
It is. Yeah, it was a little bit of a hectic, it's always busy when you're getting ready to take off, when you're, getting everything ready to go, but managed to get some footage just to hopefully just show where this hatch is, the layout of the configuration of the 777 I fly. Obviously, 777, every airplane, every airline, they have different modifications, different configurations. When we're talking about the 777, I mean, this access bay, the access door is in the exact same spot, usually right when you walk into business class or first class. So, in this video, you're going to see cargo walls, right? But that would be where you'd walk back into business class.
Should we call it up? Do you want to?
Yeah, let's pull that up, and that'll be probably a better way than me just explaining it. So I'm going to back it up here. And so what people are saying, this is the entering one left. This would be where most of the time the gateway, the stairway or the jetway would be hooked up. Take a left to go to the cockpit, take a right to go to the seating.
We're coming through the entrance, the door, and dead ahead, we see what in a passenger configuration would be the galley.
Correct. It would be one of them. You might, instead of seeing where these fire extinguishers are in this bulkhead, some airlines, this might be it'd be the galley that you would walk through, maybe to the other side. It also could be one of the restrooms. Some of these 777s have 2 restrooms up front. Some have 3. You'll see that here in a minute as well as they walk in. But this square on the floor right here, this is the access for the avionics bay. But
should we roll it and see?
Yeah, all the seats, all of this is just slightly different. Looking right here, this is where you'd walk back into first class, business class. This is your avionics bay access door, which we'll take a look at here in a minute. To the left, the cockpit, and you'd have bathrooms here, but the light coming on either side there, that is where you'd walk back and normally have those seats. But again, just kind of walking here towards this. It might be carpet in a configuration for a passenger, but they're all going to be about the same. And you can see just how easy it is to open this hatch and take a peek and hop downside.
Can we stop it there for a second? Okay, so we've just come down the hatch. And I want to be like really clear on the orientation, because I think it's important to understand where things are. We've come down the hatch. Now, if you remember, after you opened the hatch, you were kind of facing aft. And then this door is, when you're facing aft, this door is on your left. And now this ladder is on your left. So now we've come down the ladder. We're actually facing starboard right now. And this bank of boxes, that is aft. So to the right is aft. So I just want to make that clear. So like as we're going to look around this. Now, look how close those boxes are. Those are called LRUs, or line replaceable units. They're in the E1 and E2 equipment racks. A lot of important stuff is sitting right there. And you've just opened the hatch. You've come down and already you're like practically arm's length from these boxes.
It's a relatively tight space. I mean, you could reach out and touch the right side of the screen here very easily.
Okay, do you want to scroll it? Do you want to go forward like another couple seconds? Because it's going to turn. Okay, now you're looking to your right, on the very right extreme here. Okay, now we're turning forward. Okay, can you stop it right there? Oh, yeah. Can you go back like a couple right there? There. Yeah, that right there. Okay, so now we're looking directly forward, and we have on the left these circuit breaker boxes. And the one directly ahead is called, I'm going to get these confused. One is called P110 and one is P100. Sort of cream colored box is P100. To the directly to our left, you can't really see it right now. We'll look at pictures later. It's called P110. And that's where the circuit breakers are that we're going to talk about later. So I just want people to know exactly where everything is. These green oxygen bottles, by the way, are interesting because, John, this is where your oxygen comes from if your plane depressurizes. You have a different kind of mask from anyone else on board the plane. They don't drop from the ceiling. I think you have them, I don't know, in a box or something, and you take it out and it's really a full face mask and it gets fed oxygen.
Yeah, we have them in the cockpit. They're sitting to our right or left in the seat, and then you'll pull them out and it inflates. So it goes over. You're able to have a microphone in there so you could talk to air traffic control and the other crew members. But yeah, it's not the little yellow mask that people see in their safety videos when they're flying around. That looks like a little, Dixie cup.
So what's interesting from a potential hijack perspective is that you can turn these bottles off from the electronics bay. So if the plane were to depressurize and these were turned off, the flight crew would be pretty screwed. And you could also sort of imagine if you were down there and you had some savvy, you could feed your own mask from that oxygen. So that's kind of an interesting note. Another thing I think is worth saying, you can't really see it in this image, but forward from here, in the forward part of the electronics bay, you're really right under the seats of the flight crew. And there are actually cables that run from the cockpit down into the electronics bay and actually connect directly mechanically with some spoilers, and also with the trim of the stabilator. So that's kind of an interesting little wrinkle that is potentially significant if you're looking at the idea of taking over a 777 from the electronics bay. Again, like, look how close everything is. We've just basically come to the bottom of this ladder, and we've seen that the LRUs are right on our right hand, and then turning 90 degrees, we've got these circuit breaker boxes that are right there. So if you roll it some more.
I guess for you, anecdotally, if the light is turned on down here, you can actually see it underneath. You can see it underneath the rudder pedals up front. So there's some air gap that exists somewhere up front.
That's really interesting. You mentioned that, and you were saying that like maybe if somebody was down here but had like a red light, it would be harder to see for the flight crew.
A red light for sure. If it's dim, even a dim flashlight, you're not going to necessarily see it. And I know not to get too far forward, right? But some questions that people always ask when we discuss this. A lot of things would have to happen in order for this to play out, right? I mean, there's a lot. It has to be a state actor, in my opinion. I've talked about that. Question to me is like, if the plane starts turning, and there's pilots sitting up front, they're obviously going to be trying to do something and talk. But again, if the plane's been depressurized or oxygen has been removed, or, we don't have the plane, so we don't have the cockpit voice recorder of what transpired, you could also disable radios and data link messaging, et cetera. So maybe they are. That's why I wonder is like, if I'm a pilot sitting in here, I'm not just going to let the plane turn around without trying to do anything or tell ATC I have an emergency or a situation going on. So I would think those would all have to be part of the plan.
An episode that I would love to do is to get a 777 pilot in a flight simulator and sort of basically see what they did if you were cruising along and all of a sudden your plane started to bank to the left uncommanded, and then your flight controls didn't respond to your inputs. Like, what would you do? And actually, you wouldn't even need to really get a flight simulator to do it. You could just see what checklists are available, to run. There is no, first of all, they don't do any flight training for like what to do if your plane stops responding to your control inputs, because that just doesn't happen. And so I don't think there's any checklist for it either. There's certain like control anomalies that can crop up, but nothing like the scenario we've just been describing.
No, I mean, as off the top of my head, like uncommanded airspeed or unreliable airspeed is typically one that you'll do in the sim every other training cycle, potentially. We've had some instances of like unreliable airspeed and what you're doing, determining that. Asymmetric flap conditions, maybe, again, there's not much when it comes to it. I mean, again, I've been flying it for 6 years and by no means am an expert, but to my mind, the one that we typically do in the sim you see is unreliable airspeed, meaning you and I are sitting up there. Your thing is saying one thing, mine is saying, hey, we're good, but all of a sudden the angle of attack, like we're getting ready to stall, or we get a stall warning, something like that, because there's some anomaly or some issue in the air data system. But
I mean, in terms of uncommanded changes, obviously the famous 737 MAX crashes would have been perceived like that, where the plane is trying to do something and the pilot is actually fighting it. So you do have sort of like uncommanded trim,
runaway
situations.
trim. Yep, runaway trim. Yeah, for sure. But if like the plane just started, again, if I put myself like in the cockpit here with the information, obviously I have, so biased, but if the plane just started turning, what am I going to do first is I'm looking up at the MCP, the control panel for the autopilot, because they're going to be on autopilot. Make sure I didn't bump the heading, the heading knob, or bump it out of LNAV for navigation and actually bumped the heading knob, and the heading knob was turned off 90 degrees, so the plane's turning that direction. If that was all right, disconnecting the autopilot, steering, turning it back onto course while I'm trying to sort out what's going on. Like, I'd imagine those are going to be some of the initial things I would be doing in this startle situation, if you will.
Yeah. And you've probably got bells and whistles going off. And if you're looking at a decompression scenario as well, it could get pretty overwhelming pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So do you want to roll it a little bit more?
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA is heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F-words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.
I'm here on the job site with Dale, who's a framing contractor.
Hey, good morning.
Dale traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for all his business vehicles. We're here where he needs us most.
Yep, they sure are.
We make it easy for him to save on all his insurance needs, all in one place, with coverage that fits his business and bottom line. Oh, I shouldn't have looked down.
It's all right.
We're so far up here.
Look at me. Take a deep breath.
No, I'm good. So good.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
Okay, so now we're looking back at the stairs, coming back up. And you can see that it's... I imagine like you could probably even get down in there without even really moving that mat.
So, and that's what maybe other configurations, like a passenger carrier, that's going to be carpet.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also, I mean, I've been on 777, like Emirates and Air France coming in through this exact way. I should have paid attention to the floor, right? But it's held down a little bit better. It's high traffic, so if maintenance is coming in there, maybe they're putting some double-sided tape there, or maybe there's some adhesive. I don't know, but again, you can't have hundreds of people walking over that each and every day, and the risk of people falling or slipping. Like you can see, again, if we back up here, and these things, like, I don't know, they're pretty good, but we don't have the volume of people walking all over it each and every time.
Right.
But I have stepped on it before and it moves. So
okay.
Again, assumption, maybe if you in another plane, you'd be able to just kind of slap this back down, and you got the handle to worry about, but it doesn't fall and slide away.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've always wondered is like, well, if you did kind of do an illegal hatch entry, could you, like, I'd always sort of assumed that the carpet would be displaced after you put the hatch back down. But now I'm looking at this, I'm wondering if there could be a way for a savvy infiltrator to kind of just sort of attach the carpet or mat or whatever happened to be there, could just sort of attach it to the surface so that when they lowered the hatch, it would be right back where it was.
Yeah, or if it was out of position too. I mean, I think also plausible, like if a flight attendant came by and saw it, like, I don't know, my first inclination is probably someone didn't go climbing down the hatch unless I heard a noise. Maybe someone just slipped and actually, pushed the carpet out of the way. I'm going to put it back in place.
Right. It might be something that happens all the time, as you're saying, if it's not attached too securely.
Yeah.
All right. Should we press on a little bit? I think I did one more. Oh, okay. Oh, here, actually, can you oh, wait, let's keep going. Okay. We're going to talk more about those. Once again. Okay. So this is what I wanted to say. Can you actually back it up to the movie part where when you first went down? Yeah, actually right there. See, this is a good view of those circuit breaker cabinets. That's the P100. And you can see there's just row after row of circuit breakers, and you just physically pull them like a circuit breaker. Probably like they look like that on a smaller airplane. Probably a lot of people's houses have circuit breakers that look like that too. And then so in this is a great image actually, because we can see the LRUs directly on the left, directly ahead on the left, and then the circuit breakers on your right. This is everything that you need to know about how to take over control of a 777 from the electronics bay. It's very convenient, actually. So if you go to that first still image, yeah, oh, there. So this is E1 and E2. And I sent you another image, John, that had basically was this picture, but with that. So I put a circle around. That is the left ACE. So the actuator control electronics are these. They're called line replaceable units because they're all sort of configured in the same way to be sort of modular. You can pull them out, and behind them you will have power connectors and data connectors. This particular box, as I was saying, takes control inputs from the flight deck in the form of analog signals, translates it into digital, sends out the digital to the primary flight computer, then takes that back from the flight computer, translates it back into analog, and sends it to the hydraulic units that actually move the flight surfaces and make the plane bank, climb, etc. So there's four, because Boeing believes in massive redundancy. If this box breaks, it wants to have a backup. And if that box breaks, it wants to have a backup to that. This is actually quadruply redundant. There's 4 ACEs that split up. They all take the inputs from the flight deck, but then they split up the commands fourfold, so that each flight surface, for instance, the ailerons have hydraulic actuators that receive inputs from 2 different ACE boxes. And so the point of how to take over a 777 is you pull one of these out, you pull the circuit breakers on the other 3 ACEs, and you plug in your Raspberry Pi or whatever. It's basically an emulator, and it will just send the signals to those hydraulic units that normally would come from this box. Instead of coming from this box, it's coming from your joystick. And what that will do will mean that it's impossible for the flight deck to control those flight surfaces anymore. Now, you're only controlling one of the normal 4 ACEs, but because of redundancy, you're going to be able to control enough of the flight surfaces that you'll be able to move the plane in 3 axes, and you'll be able to do anything that you need to do. It won't be as high performance as a normally working plane, but it will let you put the plane where you want it to go.
We have flight computers that can be detached, depending on like the checklist that pops up, like maybe this throws a signal. But, again, I think it's, you have a state level actor who knows what they're doing, but you and I talked to before. I've had the industrial control system engineer on the podcast talking about vulnerabilities. The 777 is, as you said, transitional technology coming out of the 80s, early 90s. I don't think anyone was really thinking about cyber vulnerabilities, hacking. That wasn't at the forefront. It's like safety, redundancy, not, hey, someone would ever go in here and hack a plane and steal it away. So I think that's a lens to look through and important to highlight.
Yeah, I mean, and John, I really want to draw a line under the idea that I don't want to encourage people to try to hijack 777s from the electronics bay. I'm really concerned, though, that people understand that these vulnerabilities exist and that things could be done. There are mitigations that could be taken if people take it seriously. And the reason I'm going to sort of this somewhat absurd length to try to explain to you that this is actually a thing is that I have had very prominent people in prominent venues like a Netflix documentary say that it's impossible, basically say we don't have to worry about this. And when MH370 disappeared in 2014, we were really at the beginning of a period of cyber attacks, cyber vulnerabilities being exploited in all kinds of different realms. I mean, we all know about, I was just watching this great hospital show, The Pit, which I would actually highly recommend. But one of the plot points is that they get hacked and they can't do what they need to do because they got hacked. Like so many things get hacked, power stations and voting systems and everything gets hacked. And the idea that like a plane somehow magically can't get hacked is a very, very dangerous idea. And we're actually seeing a lot of cyber vulnerability exploits. We just last year, in I believe it was March of 2025, saw the TCAS system of a bunch of planes landing at DCA, Reagan in Washington. They had their TCAS signals spoofed. And so they were getting these spurious warnings that there was the collision risk existed. And so there was a couple of them aborted their landings and went around because somebody was spoofing these signals. So I think we're at a time where something is real and it's happening, but people aren't used to it. We have to make them used to it. I'm trying to kind of awaken people to the new reality that we live in. And whether or not this is what happened with MH370, and I'm not saying that I know for sure that it did, But I think it's important to recognize that the possibility existed then and the possibility existed now. Now, I've often said that MH370 itself couldn't happen in exactly the same way today because a lot of things have changed. But what hasn't changed is that there's bad people, there's bad, smart people out there who are looking for weak points to take advantage of. And I mean, listen, it's not just bad guys. Our government and our allies do it too. Everybody is out there messing around in cyberspace. And the whole world, I mean, it used to be just computers were hackable. Now everything is hackable. Your light bulb is hackable. I could, if I'm smart enough, I can change the color of the light in your bedroom.
Right.
Everything has a computer in it.
All connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, this slightly apples to oranges, but to paint the picture of everyone, I was trying to download a picture real quick of the RQ-170. This was hacked by Iran. It looks like a little mini B-2. Remember this, right? Again, GPS spoofing, GPS denial, depending on what source you're reading there. We obviously don't have the complete picture because that's a very, and still is, classified program, but it's not denied by the United States that Iran was able to influence this RQ-170 somehow, some way, and have it crash land inside Iran back in 2011. Again, this is some pretty advanced technology from the U.S., right? And again,
they basically reverse engineered that drone and built their own drone, and now they're using their drones against us and killing. They just killed 6 soldiers in the U.S. a few days ago with their drones. That story you're talking about is there, as you were saying, there's a lot of contested details about it. We don't really know the exact details. It seems like it was something called smart GPS spoofing, where basically it was feeding slightly erroneous data into the basically flight control computer of this, or the navigation computer of this system, and basically lying to it about where it was, so that it had been fooled into believing it could land. It would land in a friendly environment. So that John, I really, that incident to me marks kind of the beginning of the age of cyber attacks on aviation. And this happened 3 years later. But when MH370 occurred, the idea of taking over an aircraft by hacking it was science fiction. It was a conspiracy theory. It was outrageous, but it had already happened. That's what's so incredible.
Yeah. You'd mentioned the patent. Should we dive into that a little bit?
Oh yeah, let's talk about the patent. So basically, as I was talking to people and trying to really push back against this idea that it's impossible, I thought, well, I'm just a freelance journalist. I have no technical credentials. So I thought, how can I sort of give this the imprimatur of legitimacy? Like, how can I get someone with the weight of authority to say whether this is potentially valid or not? And so I thought, well, what if I get a patent? And so one of my readers or listeners reached out to me and suggested, the person said, I work at the German patent office, and it's conceivable you could patent, da, da, da. And I said, can you help me? And they said, no, I can't help you because I work at the patent office, but I can give you the name of a patent attorney, and then you can hire them and you can file for a patent, which is what I did. And so it's been a long process. I couldn't talk about it until the application was in, because that you're just not supposed to do that. So now the patent application is in. It's the title of the patent is called Vorrichtung zur manuellen Steuerung eines Flugzeugs aus einem Avionikraum des Flugzeugsverfahren Flugzeug. Now I'm going to get angry or critical. I'm going to get critical comments about my German accent, but this is basically an application for a patent for manually steering an airplane from the avionics room of an aircraft, vehicle, airplane. Or I don't know, that last 3 words I don't really understand. But anyway, they are working on it. It's scheduled to be published on 15th of July, 2027, at which point I will have a patent on how to steal an 777. from the electronics bay. There's all sorts of like twists and turns that could easily happen where they might come back to the patent attorneys and say, oh, you have to like fix this or change that or something. I don't really know. I've never done a patent application before. And honestly, I speak some German, but this stuff is pretty arcane German. So it takes me a little while to work through it. But it's pretty exciting. It took me a long time to kind of get to this point. And I feel like it's exciting. I've always sort of like dreamed of having a patent too. I think it would be cool. It seems like something that a mad scientist would have. So
so if you have this, then let's say it all goes through July of 27, you have it. What's the next step with this?
I mein, it would be kind of fun to build a box and say, hey, here's a box that now, in order for an idea to be patentable, it has to be potentially useful, right? You can't patent blowing up the moon or something. And so what is the usefulness of a box that lets you steal an airplane? Well, potentially, if it was a piece of equipment that you marketed to like airline captains, there was that famous case of Germanwings 9525, where the captain left the cockpit to go take a leak. While he was gone, the first officer locked the door, entered 0 into the like commanded altitude for the autopilot. Yeah. And so the plane flew into the ground. And if the captain had a device and it happened to be a 777 and he had this device and he could go down to the electronics bin and like follow the like, laminated card of instructions and say, okay, pull this circuit breaker, unplug this, plug this in. He could have it's far-fetched, I grant you, but I'm like, there is a conceivable application. And I will say that as somebody who talks about MH370 a lot, I'm constantly hearing from people who say, I think that MH370 was taken over remotely because there was a device installed in this plane called the uninterruptible autopilot. And that is actually a real thing. Boeing actually in 2003, I think they took out a patent on a system. This was in the wake of 9/11. They were like, we should think about ways that you could take over control from the ground away from the flight deck so that we can prevent planes from flying into buildings and the like. Now, you're a pilot. I bet you would not want to have this attached to your plane, that somebody on the ground could just take over command of your aircraft.
Well, this is a point of discussion that happens quite a bit in our circles, right? The fear is that I'm going to be out of a job at some point, right? You could have maybe one person sitting up there, like if in a practical application of this, you would have one pilot up there and then a ground station that's monitoring and backing up and helping control. But to your point, no, like where someone could just take over my plane and do what they want when they want, because maybe it's the one time that it really helps you out because everyone's incapacitated and they save the day. But to this whole point, like my concern is the vulnerability of it. You could just have someone hack that system at some point with nefarious intent, and then you're just along for the ride. Like that would be my fear, not also the fact that I'd be out of a job, but
But to bring it back to this idea of controlling the cockpit, controlling the plane from outside the cockpit, as we see, there's like lots of different reasons why somebody might want to consider doing that, of taking the pilot out of the loop. And I don't think really there's any question at this point that it's theoretically possible. Now, whether somebody actually exploited this, as you said, John, it would have to be a state level actor. But let's put it on the board of possibilities to consider. Don't rule it out and say we refuse to even consider it. We need to sort of get in the habit of considering these scenarios that once upon a time would have been considered science fiction. We live in a world that is science fiction right now. And so let's keep our ears up a little more than we've been used to. But John, I appreciate your going on this journey with me. It's always really fun, doing these episodes together with you.
Again, I think it's fun to discuss this because, is this highly likely this is what happened? I don't know. It would take, again, a lot of effort, and there will be a lot of moving pieces that all have to align in order to do something like this. But like, again, as you've said, like we kind of live in bizarro land. It seems like you cannot I think it'd be naive to rule out one thing or another without fully diving down, because we've seen stranger things come true, right? So I think it's good to have an open mind, but I acknowledge that this would be a very challenging thing to do, like hands down.
Well, if I get my patent and I get my box built and I come visit you,
yes, let's see what happens.
We'll see if we can do it. I don't think your employer would be very happy about me messing around.
Yeah, they might not.
LRUs during flight.
Yeah. I got an idea. I just want to try it, see what happens. Yes. So they got to have one in an avionics back shop. You can hook up to a tester or something like that.
I'd love to find a test rig. I've been making calls, but I haven't nailed that down yet. But I'm working on it. Thank you, John.
Yeah, Jeff, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Okay, great.
Has the news been getting you down? I'm Megan McArdle, and I'm here to help. I'm the host of a news show from Washington Post Opinion called Reasonably Optimistic, and it's an antidote to the pessimism that's riddling America right now. Every Wednesday, I'm going to talk to people who see a path forward.
It does seem to me that there is some awakening of a desire to act together to solve problems where they are.
I am a believer in America, and it's worth fighting for.
Join me Wednesdays on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. That's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter.com/zip.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.